there were instances, like we had mentioned earlier, where I just had to face those mistakes head on. I've had clients we've had some disagreements on that have sent some strongly worded messages via text and said that I need to find a new job. But I was able to handle that respectfully and say, I appreciate your concerns, and we always work to be the best service that we can be.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of the Leadership in Business podcast. Now, to start, I would like to thank the John Papa John Entrepreneurial Center for allowing me to have the space to do this podcast, and all my friends who was the driving force to start this podcast and hopefully make it into something great. I have, even though he probably wouldn't say it himself, but I have a great person sitting across from me at the table, Jacob Kurt, owner of Kurt Lawncare. Jake, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, thanks you for having me, Hunter. I'm excited to see what you have in store for me today.
And in store, we have a lot. And I would like to open up with a lawn care business story. And we'll get to lawn care here in a little bit. So it's an Ohio teen named Zach Cox who owns Zach's Lawn Care. And Zach is 16 years old. The Ohio native told Making Money with Charles Payne on Wednesday that he began mowing the lawn of his elderly neighbors and family friends at the age of 10, and now his service has sprouted into a full-fledged small business. "It feels amazing," he said. "It feels like I'm actually getting to where I want to be." Cox said in the past 2 weeks alone, his business has expanded from mowing 15 yards to nearly 50 yards plus, and then additional maintenance jobs like power washing. The teen said he even had a chance to hire some of his friends as employees. "Hiring my friends, that's even cooler," he said. "Being able to go to school with them, being friends with them, and then being their boss. It's really cool to be so young and doing this. I feel like I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life," he said. "Starting out so young, it's something that I've always loved, and this is why I've made it an actual business." For other teens looking to build their own business, Cox shared a word of advice. Focus on investing yourself and being mindful of the people surrounding you. Now, does that kind of ring any bells, hit home with you there, Jake?
Yeah, I think we share a similar journey. I started my lawn care business around the age of 10. I believe, I'm 19 this year. I have been telling people that it's year 9, so we'll go with 10. I do think that the focus on yourself thing is really important, and having purposeful activity and movement. When I first started off, I did an awful job confusing activity with progress, and I would sit at school with the iPads that we had for one-to-one, and I'd watch YouTube videos of people cutting grass, and how are they doing it? Well, cutting grass hasn't changed in the past 10 years, and probably won't ever change unless these robot mowers take over. But the concept is the same. So I really confused that activity with progress. And once I kind of figured out, I'm not being purposeful, I was able to focus on the things that really mattered. And that really helped my business grow.
That sounds wonderful. So you mentioned that you were 10 years old when you started your lawn care business. Let's back up even further. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Fairfield, Ohio. My parents met in Ohio. My dad's originally from Dubuque and went to the University of Miami to get his master's in school psychology. And my mom was there studying special education. And those two met, got married, had me, and we moved to Independence, Iowa when I was 4.
Independence, Iowa. Is that a pretty big city?
Independence is just east of Cedar Falls. It's got a population of about 6,500. I believe they're a 3A district for high school athletics.
3A. So I grew up in Tama, and they played 3A football. So I don't know if we played in the same conference, but that's pretty interesting. That
Yeah, I'm not sure. No.
Where did you go to high school then? Independence?
So I actually attended two different high schools. I went to Independence for a majority of my educational journey. I open enrolled to North Lynn, which is a small school in Troy Mills, halfway through my junior year of high school. It was in pursuit of new opportunities with my younger brother Dylan, and that turned out to be one of the greatest things I ever did. They had a more established business program, which I really benefited from, along with basketball was a key aspect of life at North Lynn. I'm going to be honest, I didn't excel by any means as an athlete, but learning those teamwork skills under a successful program is something that I value.
Yeah, so you basically think that basketball had a major part in developing you as a team player?
I would say there was definitely exponential growth. So I think kind of my leadership journey started in high school, where I was starting to experience like real world leadership. Yes, you have some projects in 5th and 6th grade where you have to quote unquote lead, but definitely get more in depth. I remember working on some projects in student council, having those get shot down, and I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is miserable, but really changed my mindset of this is a learning opportunity. What went wrong? Having those post-mortem evaluations. And I think at a young age, figuring that out, I was much happier because of it. I was worried about myself and not really what others thought. As far as dealing with people and accountability, I'm grateful that my dad is in positions of leadership, and leadership is not necessarily just a position, and yes, it helps to have a title in some cases, but having those real world experiences, like having a student council member come in late to a meeting and understanding that they might have some things going on in their life that I'm not aware of, and it's not my job to judge. It's my job to support them, assure that they can be a member that's engaged in student council. And I think like there are so many different things I learned throughout my extracurricular involvement that really builds me into who I am today.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, because I was a part of the student council too back when I went to school at South Tama. I absolutely 100% feel that of like student council, hey, I have this really great idea. I want to do something with it. But then people tell you no. And no is one of the hardest things to deal with, especially in a young academic mind of, hey, I wanted to do this to grow as a leader, but then being shot down and being told no. I think taking that accountability is what's really that big aspect, and like looking inward and being like, hey, why was it a no? It sort of helps, especially since your father was in those leadership roles that you were mentioning, that being able to see in the big picture, the perspective, things that all this, culminates into growth. And that's the most important part, especially through extracurriculars. So how important would you say these extracurriculars are, both in a leadership standpoint, teamwork standpoint?
I think just in general, extracurriculars are super important. I'm a big believer in the classroom not being able to teach everything. There are some lessons you learn outside of the classroom that just simply cannot be replicated inside of a school. Throughout my high school career, both at Independence and North Lynn, I was involved in almost everything. I did cross country at one point in time, then I tried football, I did basketball, I did tennis, I did golf, I played a little bit of baseball. As far as other clubs, I was in National Honor Society, I was in DECA, which is the Distributive Education Clubs of America, which is focused on business. I was also in FBLA, which is the Future Business Leaders of America. I did choir, I did the musical, I did a little bit of band. A big thing for me was diversification before specification. I knew that I had my whole life in front of me, and I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be miserable in whatever career path that I chose simply because I didn't experience things in high school and made decisions off that. So I truly believe it's important to get out and experience things. Like for musical, it wasn't my favorite, but I enjoyed doing it with my friends and really valued that I learned something from it. It was a simple lesson, but the musical's not for me.
Yeah, learning that big scope and then working your way in is, I think, a thing that a lot of people miss nowadays, because I was the same thing too. I did music, I did band, was on the tennis team, I played golf in my free time, I bowled in my free time. And the whole reason why I did all these things is because my parents were like, hey, go out there and find what you love and go and figure out what you're good at, is a big thing about it. So I 100% agree with you about the diversification and working into specification. That's a big thing. Like, especially when you worked in those, like the business things, do you feel like those business programs in high school really geared you up to be the businessman you are today?
As much as I'd love to say that they did, I don't think they did. And Independence didn't really have a business program. We actually started ADECA. It was myself, a couple of my classmates, and an advisor by the name of Megan Rollins. Shout out to her. She took on the role as an advisor, as a volunteer. The way that my understanding is, the board votes on money and like who's going to staff what organization. Now it's referred to as a career and technical service organization. And by 2024, your schools are required to have certain classes, certain orgs that revolve around that. But that's really into the business teaching aspect of things. But that's something that we went down to Omaha, and was a great networking event. And then it kind of fizzled out. We weren't able to get on the board for funding. And because we weren't funded, we couldn't pay any teachers. So that was really disappointing. Northland FBLA had a little bit more success. That was the year of COVID. The state national conference obviously was remote. I did place second in the state in entrepreneurship, qualified for nationals, but did not attend just because it was going to be online and I didn't really see the value of it. But I do think one program that I should shout out is the Iowa Association of Business and Industries Business Horizons. I went there as a student and learned about the free enterprise system, and it was a very humbling experience as far as just overall life. I came in very confident in myself. It was a good opportunity to see, like, all right, maybe I'm not all that. Being around other students that had passion for business and seeing some blind spots. And this would have been sophomore year that I had gone, so I'm now a sophomore in college. The next couple of years, I came back as a student helper, and I now serve on the board as a student representative and help out during the summer. And I think the growth that I saw there was great, learning that humility, different like myths about entrepreneurship, which I think we'll get to talk about later. So yeah, I think that maybe not high school. I think some high school programs have that, but I think one thing I am proud of is it wasn't there, and I went out and found it.
Absolutely. You gotta find the opportunity. You gotta find the door to get in there and be like, hey, make me a better person, no matter where it shows up. And if you gotta go and find it, 100%. And I think it made you a better person because of it. You know, you were talking about business horizons, you know, through ABI. And I went through the Iowa University, like the Iowa Leadership University. And that, holy cow, whatever program they're running needs to be like front page news everywhere, because just how they develop young minds and young leaders, it's very important. And it really is a craft that they have nearly perfected. Now that you kind of talked about a lot of, you know, all these different programs that kind of helped you become the businessman that you are, how do you interpret these or put these to good work in your lawn care business? First off, talk a little bit about the business.
Yeah, so my business is Kurt Lawncare, LLC. It wasn't always an LLC. I started out right at about the age of 10 when a neighbor asked me if I could cut their lawn after I was done with mine, and I said, sure, I'll do it for free. And they're like, no, we'll pay you. And they paid me $10, and that was the most money I'd ever seen in my hand at once. That was really cool. I continued to mow their lawn and thought, wow, maybe like this might work. Like I know other kids older than me were working at Fairway. I wasn't able to work because I wasn't 14 yet. I thought, well, I can work here and make money here and save up for the things that I want. The first couple years, it was my parents, my neighbor, and like the occasional odd job. But I named it Kurt Lawncare, and I guess I later learned that it was a sole proprietorship and continued that. I used to load the push mower in the back of the minivan and drive across town, and my mom would drop me off and then pick me up once I was done. And over time, I grew it. There's something fishy to potential clients about a 10, 11, 12-year-old showing up and saying, hey, I'm going to mow your lawn. I run this lawn care business. Now that I look back, I smile and think like, okay, that made sense. Like I used to be like, oh, come on, give me a shot. But now I don't think I would hire somebody. I mean, maybe I would with my experience, but I get where they're coming from. So one thing that I wanted to do was kind of prove myself. So I went out and bought a riding lawnmower. John Deere had financing where it was 0% interest if you paid it off in 12 months. I had $1,000 some odd dollars in my bank account, and the lawnmower I wanted was, I think, $2,200. So I took on all that debt, and I think I paid it off 6 weeks later. People were like, okay, maybe we will give him this chance. Since then, it's been a lot of like recognizing that I'm not just the kid anymore and I have these experiences. So I've done a lot of landscape work, mostly mulch installations. This summer, I had a client that had me remove 36 boxwoods, which was definitely one of the larger jobs that I had. But it's really provided me with the freedom to work when I want, and I'm still able to like connect with my family. Some people can't go on vacation because they have work. I haven't missed a family vacation yet, and it's overall been a really great experience.
No, that's fantastic. I know kind of when you were talking about like being 12, 13, going around knocking on people's doors, you know, when I was a 13 and 14-year-old, I never would have done that. I never would have taken that drive, that initiative to basically go around to neighbors and be like, hey, I'm going to mow your lawn and you're going to pay me. And to a lot of people, that seems like you kind of mentioned, it's kind of, whoa, what's this kid here? You know, this chump going to mow my lawn. But, you know, you really got to prove yourself and be able to show, like you kind of did with that John Deere mower, being able to get that nice equipment, you know, because people take pride. When people take pride in what they do, they're going to invest in it. And then they're going to show others like, hey, I got to ride the lawnmower.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me. Kids at junior high and high school always joked that I would take my homecoming date on the lawnmower, and that was how like other kids would take their dad's Jeep or mom's convertible or something like that. The joke here was I was gonna leave extra early and drive the 3 miles across town with the lawnmower, but that never did happen. But I really enjoyed the aspect of like winning people over. One of my Clifton core strengths is woo, which is winning people over. And
quick, talk about Clifton Strengths.
So Clifton Strengths is essentially a strengths assessment. I guess I don't have the greatest explanation for it, but it's often tied into strengths-based leadership and using your strengths to become a better leader. And we had done this at UNI. Was confused after I did it. I understood like, okay, these are my skills, and okay, perfect. And then at Leadership Iowa, that ABI program we had mentioned, there's like, here's your skills, here's why you use them, here's your blind spots, here's why you play to your strengths.
And how you apply them too. Yeah, especially, you know, I think you kind of did a nice overview of it. You know, Clifton Strengths is just basically, these are the things you're good at. Of course, you know, people are very complex, and we don't always know within ourselves what we know we're good at. And Clifton Strengths takes that and pulls it and be like, hey, you are more like a woo person. You're very good at winning people over. Or for me is context. I'm very good at going in the history, going in the past, looking at trends. It sort of kind of is like a little detailed sheet that says, hey, these are the things you're good at. These are the things that you need to work on. And the application of it is kind of what is the main part, and what ABI through Leadership Iowa did excellent job at. I asked you to bring a quote here today, so we'll talk about that a little bit, and hopefully we can maybe tie that into some of the stuff that we've kind of already mentioned, or kind of bounce off new ideas. This is, I just spent $1 million on your education. Why Would I Fire You Now? And that was by Jack Welch. For those of you who don't know who Jack Welch is, he is a retired American executive. He was the CEO of General Electric, a multi-million-dollar company from the year 1981 to 2001. So he had a good 20-year tenure in there. So, Jake, why did you bring this quote onto the podcast?
Yeah, so this is a relatively new quote that I stumbled across in the past couple months, but I really like it. It's referring to an instance that happened in the GE warehouse where Welch or one of his employees made a huge error early on in the GE. Technical components or the chemical components of something blew up and destroyed a solid portion of the warehouse. Whoever was at fault had gone up to the superior's office and said, "I'm going to resign before you fire me." And he responded with, "Why would I fire you? I just spent $1 million on your education." And I think that's really a good way to look at it. And as I look back, I've had those instances in my life. I want to always be learning. And with Lawncare, I remember there was times in my life where I completely screwed up, but didn't quit. And I had people that were kind enough and took me under their wing to allow me to grow. When I mowed for that neighbor, part of the deal was I got to use their mower. And they handed me the gas can and were like, "All right, fill her up." And I poured gas in the oil funnel.
Oh, no.
Because I literally had never had to worry about it before. And they had to drain the mower, but super nice about it. Literally just said, "Oh, we can use yours today." And never heard anything about it. I had an instance where I thought, "Oh, my mower blades will clear this stump by a couple inches." They didn't. I bent both my blades and almost snapped my mower deck and continued to mow because I thought maybe it won't be that noticeable. It was. Tore that lawn up pretty bad. And that was a good learning experience where I came back and I'm like, "Dad, I messed this up." And he goes, "Well, did you talk to him?" And I'm like, I will." He's like, "Nope, get in the car." So we drove back to the client's house. I went up and knocked on his door and I said, "Look, I completely just screwed up your lawn. It will grow back. I'm confident." There wasn't anything that I ripped up. It was just cut really, really funky. And some areas were going to burn. He was very understanding. He said he appreciated talking. I said that service is free. And I think that it's super valuable. And I used to have my brother work for me, and I wouldn't say joy, but I had fun with the idea that I was superior. When he worked for me, I don't know how many times I fired Dylan. It was over stuff like, oh, he bumped a mower on something, and very, very minuscule things. But fast forward 4 or 5 years later, my younger brother, Brady, was out mowing our lawn this summer, and I bought a brand new bagger, a material collection system, and he drove that straight into the tree. It was a small tree. It was probably about 4 inches in diameter, a very skinny tree, but he ripped it out of the ground and snapped the housing down. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, did you do this?" And he said, "Yeah, I think so." And was very nervous about my reaction. And I said, "Okay, well, here's how you got to remember that hangs off by about 6 inches to your right side when you mow." And I really didn't care. I will lose the resale value, but the main objective was to have him learn from that. So I didn't shoot him a bill. I did make him mow more. I said, "Well, now you do owe me extra grass to cut, and we'll call it even." But I really think it's important to view those mistakes as learning opportunities, as long as they're not super severe. But I really, really like that quote.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you hit a lot of the major points on the head. Always being willing to learn. In your example with your younger brother kind of running over, yeah, slap on the wrist, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. There's always going to be a consequence to every action. That's just life. That's how it works. But the main point, like you hit on, is learning and growing from that. I think another important part of this all, and from what you were describing in your story, it's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have burn marks on your grass. I mean, it'll grow back, so I think it's very important that people learn that, failing is just all a part of the process. Tomorrow is going to be a different day, and it's going to be a new day. It's basically a clean slate. So it's very important to learn from yesterday's mistakes so you can make today's successes. 100% I agree with that. That's fantastic. So you kind of mentioned various different people throughout the podcast so far, and I know we kind of wanted to hit on this point, but I know your favorite part of Lawncare is connecting with people. So can you maybe talk about connecting with people and why it's your favorite part?
Yeah, so we had mentioned Clifton Strengths. All of mine have to do with connecting with people. So woo is winning them over. I know communication is one, so like putting my thoughts into words, individualization, so realizing that everyone has strengths. And really always enjoyed like that aspect of the challenge. Like I'm gonna go sell myself to these people and hopefully I'll get to mow for them. I think that was a very key component. I really enjoy working with people. It was always fun. I had a student ask me once at Business Horizons, they said, "Are you worried about robotic lawnmowers kicking you out of business?" And I said, "A little bit." But at the same time, I'm not like a huge company. I'm not gonna lie and say that I'm a massive lawn care provider. I'm a small business. What I offer is that communication aspect that a robot can never replicate. A lot of my clients are older. Their kids have moved out of their house. They live out of state, so their family is distant. And for a little bit, it's like lawn care, like that was part of my family. I'd go and talk to clients after I cut grass for 30 minutes about just life, their kids, the animals they saw in the backyard, the weather, anything that I could talk about with them, I think brought them joy and was just a small bit of my time and really added to the touch of my lawn care service.
Absolutely. Through my internships that I've done, everything got better when I got to connect with people. And it's very important to think about, technology is advancing at a rapid rate, and we're not going to stop that. In fact, there's like a rule out there, and you can fact check me on it, that basically means that technology is going to duplicate on itself at a faster and faster rate till basically the end of time. But the one thing that I don't think technology will ever do, like you mentioned, being able to go and talk with Granny Smith on the corner who family lives out of state, chances are it's like, she's going to pay you to mow the lawn. That's kind of the reason why you're there, but you're also there to learn and get to know Granny Smith. And I feel like that aspect, especially with growing companies, they lose. I really like how you think that that's the most important part. And frankly, it's a selling point to some people to be like, hey, I want to get to know you, I want to know why you want your lawn care done, at a degree that isn't just you getting the John Deere and just doing it yourself. Learning about people's history is a big part of why we do things. So I 100% agree with you there. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoy connecting with people like we mentioned. There are some unique situations where a client, they couldn't find anybody to do snow removal for them. I didn't do snow removal, but they said like, hey, we want to make sure that they can get up and down the driveway. And I said, all right, I can take care of just this one. I've taken clients to the post office who aren't able to drive. I took a client to the cemetery in town once to pay respects her husband that passed away. That's not in the lawn care job description at all. And that was a unique experience where I kind of got there and I said, take as much time as you need. And she said, oh no, come out with me. And we went and brought flowers and set those down. And she, a kid, this is where I'll be at one day. And definitely something that if you would have told me when I was 14, like, oh, you're going to take clients to the post office and cemetery, I would have called you crazy. But that's just kind of that aspect where, yes, I provided that service, but I also offered some things on the side for the elderly clients.
Absolutely. It's all about adding that value, adding that extra, I care about you. And, people who feel like they're being cared about and taken care of, They're going to tell their friends, hey, Jake just took me to the post office. Jake just took me to the cemetery so I could, mourn for a little bit. But I paid him to mow my lawn. So a lot of people are going to think, oh, this man really cares not only about his craft, but he also cares about people. And being able to be like, going back to my example of Granny Smith, that Granny Smith tells 10 of her friends, at the knitting club, that's potentially 10 more customers. And that's a big part of the aspect, especially when providing a service.
Yeah, word of mouth is definitely one of the most important things for small businesses to understand. I always joke, good things will build you up over time, but one bad thing will break you in a second. I always made sure that if I did make a mistake, I addressed it and owned up to it, because I didn't want it to be what ruined me. A lot of clients referred to friends and family, which was great. There were instances, like we had mentioned earlier, where I just had to face those mistakes head on. I've had clients we've had some disagreements on that have sent some strongly worded messages via text and said that I need to find a new job. But I was able to handle that respectfully and say, I appreciate your concerns, and we always work to be the best service that we can be, constantly improve.
Resilience is very important as a small business. You're going to get bad rep no matter where you go, even if it's just a little thing here and there. It's always going to happen. It's going to be a part of the journey. It's going to be a part of the story, like, hey, I'm sorry I messed up. And owning up to that, like we mentioned earlier, learning from that, growing from that is another aspect. Being able to own your mistakes, it's very hard for people to do that. So I'm really glad that you're able to do that. People are going to be like, hey, you should go into like not doing anything. Being able to bounce back from that and then continue to grow is awesome. So good on you for doing that. Another thing that I kind of wanted to mention is that I like the saying, and of course I'm going to apply it to your situation, is you're only as good as your last lawn. You're only as good as your last customer. You're only as good as providing a service that people are going to talk about. If the last lawn you mowed was an amazing job, like, oh, it's got the cross section, like plaid pattern, no burn marks. He got right close to the edge. Very good. I'm going to tell 10 people about it. Same things on the flip side of the coin. You burn some marks, you miss a couple spots. Oh crap, I accidentally ran over a patulip, something like that. That person's going to have a bad thought on you and also going to tell 10 people. It's really important for small businesses to keep the resilience and to grow and try to keep on providing that good service. Now, to kind of wrap up things and kind of hit home is, I personally think of you, Jake, as a well-rounded person. You're very good with talking with people. You're very good at taking initiative and going on and, doing your own thing. Like, I don't even think when we met that I was the one who initiated the conversation. It was you, because you wanted to talk and get to know me. And I feel like that's a very awesome aspect of you as a person and as you as a lawn care provider and a business person, an entrepreneur. I kind of wanted to get your feedback or get your thoughts on, would you call yourself a well-rounded individual?
I would say extremely. I continue to diversify. It's a little less now, but at the University of Northern Iowa, I am a volunteer trip coordinator with the outdoor department. I teach the belay clinics. I continue to pursue my entrepreneurial ventures, entrepreneurship, social media management. I just enjoy that learning and the aspect. I like to joke that I'm a Jake of all trades, and I'm sure there's things that I'm doing right now that I did not mention, and quite frankly, have forgot about until I read my to-do list again. I think that it's really important to be well-rounded. It's makes it really easy. We talked connect with people. It allows me, like I read a book about wine. I'm able to go to business events and talk about, oh, you chose a Burgundy wine. Like, do you like reds? Do you like whites? and stuff like that. I don't drink, but it's fun to ask those questions. I think that people in general are willing to help you throughout your course of life, which has been a really big thing. And I'm also a firm believer in that no one is self-made. I think that we talked about networking. I've had so many people help me along the way, and sometimes people will come and be like, wow, it's crazy that you did that all by yourself. And it's like, I really didn't, as much as I'd love to. And I think that there's a myth with entrepreneurship that is, you're so self-made. Not really. People have help along the way. Like Jeff Bezos, he got a investment of $300,000. And I don't want to take away from what he's doing, but that can be applied to the richest man on earth. And it can also be applied to students at UNI who went to the tutor center and were able to bump up that grade. I really believe in the power of people and networking.
Growth, networking, being okay to fail, being able to reach out for help, especially staying resilient, especially in these tough times. It's very important. This was great. So, Jake, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You have been very open to the ideas in our conversation. Thank you again for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was great.
And with that, everyone, thank you for listening to the Leadership in Business Story. We just had Jacob Kurt, owner of Kurt Lawncare, LLC. He was a very excellent person to talk with, very personable guy. So stay tuned for the next episode of the Leadership in Business Story, hosted with me, Hunter White. Hey everyone, make sure that you listen to the next episode of the podcast where we bring on Dr. John Wiles, Associate Professor of Choral Music at the University of Northern Iowa. And if you would like, please make a donation to my coffee at ko-fi.com/HunterVADM. Once again, thank you for listening to this podcast and stay tuned for November 1st.